Prince Sebastian continued his sailing studies after his children emigrated to Australia, mulling over a change of name for security reasons. Prince Sebastian rose quickly through the sailing ranks, achieving the rank of captain at an unusually young age. He then signed an agreement to captain the maiden voyage of a ship that was under construction, to be called the Titanic, the largest passenger vessel ever placed under construction at the time. He decided to use a pseudonym for security reasons, adopting the work name Captain Ed J. Smith. The launch of the maiden voyage of the Titanic, with my great-grandfather Prince Sebastian at the helm, was one of the most bizarre events in human history captured on film. The maiden voyage of that ship was a long-planned, organized crime mutiny-themed disaster. Years of planning and research had gone into the mutiny plot whilst the ship itself was under construction. It ended up being an organized crime mass murder, specifically to illegally pass on, or steal, inheritances. People were approached about trying to get their inheritances illegally early, and asked to give their relatives tickets, or try to talk them into getting on board for the trip of a lifetime. If the ship was sunk via mutiny, they were to receive their inheritances earlier than they should have. People who participated basically agreed to participate in the murder of their relatives who had named them beneficiaries of their estates. If the plan succeeded, the perpetrators were planning to collect a cut of the proceeds later, on top of any prepaid fees. All the wealthiest society types they could find were approached about going on the trip, with plenty of tickets given away as gifts by beneficiaries. People who stood to benefit from the estates of passengers even had their identity stolen after their relatives were confirmed as booked for the trip, in some cases. The launch was a hysterical event, where literally thousands of people watched their wealthy relatives sail away, thinking they would never see them alive again, and could be about to become wealthy if they were reported dead in a tragic accident at sea. They yelled tearful, nervously pre-celebratory hysterical farewells, putting their heads on the shoulder of a friend and sobbing, "Oh my God, I'm gonna be rich." It was so weird the passengers stopped waving back with a "what the" response. Others were seeing off the perpetrators of the plan, waving their hands and yelling things like, "This ship is going down." Individual comments were lost in the general noise, which was intensely loud. Prince Sebastian, Captain Ed, had a relatively problem-free start to the trip, began noticing people stopping to take pictures of him with cameras. They had demented looks on their faces when they did, and appeared to be behaving as if the photographs would be slightly overly valuable souvenirs to them. He repeatedly said, "Why are some of these people so weird?" My great-grandfather Prince Sebastian Habsburg, known as Captain Ed, was incapacitated at the helm by being bashed over the head with a German-made compass unbolted from the bulkhead, then chloroformed, or something similar, to unconscious. He was then stripped of his clothing and identification, wrapped in blankets, and dumped in a lifeboat, with the compass in his lap. A full-scale mutiny by participating passengers to replace the entire main crew was what followed. After the rogue crew had control of the ship, they opened all the compartment doors that were supposed to make the ship near unsinkable, then rammed the biggest iceberg they could find, at as fast a speed as they could manage, at an intercepting angle. When they were sure the ship was sinking beyond salvation, getting lower on the water, and appearing to show signs of an eventual split in the hull, they got on all the available lifeboats on the other side of the ship to the unconscious captain, and paddled away to watch it sink. They intended to wait until it sunk, then check bodies that floated to the surface for any valuables and identity documents that could be stolen. Then call the other ship to pick them up with flares. The perpetrators thought the other vessel, Carpathia, was fully aware of their plan, and would hold back intentionally waiting for word from the perpetrators. Sebastian, Captain Ed, was slowly regaining consciousness in the lifeboat he was dumped in, the first person put in one, before the iceberg was rammed. He was semi-conscious and incoherently aware of the Titanic seriously listing in some way, then suddenly woke up in the front of the lifeboat facing the ship. The front end slowly dropped below the water. The back was noticeably going vertical, and was at a large angle sticking out of the water with the engine still running. It was the first thing he saw when he looked up. The people in the lifeboats behind and near the one he was in suddenly became very audibly clear to him. They were saying things like, "We've done it. Why, we've actually done it. We've sunk it, murdered all those people, and stolen all those identities and inheritances." Staring like lunatics at it, quietly trying to congratulate each other, in the lunatic version of all. The back end kept lifting out of the water, the stack slid off the ship, the engines ground to a loud halt, and the remaining vessel went totally vertical. It then started sinking down under its own weight, with the air pressure inside the vessel still out of the water building as it rose, back end up. The air pressure inside suddenly became too great, and all available release points for air pressure on the vessel began to pop, particularly small compartments and any glass doors or windows. For an extended period of seconds, it sounded loudly like metal and glass breaking like cooking popcorn, from the base near the water to the end. The ship accelerated vertically downwards as the pressure released, then suddenly sank straight down and disappeared below the water. After a delay, the lifeboat Sebastian, Captain Ed, was in was suddenly pulled forward towards the spot the vessel's back end had disappeared in, sucked towards the hull the vessel left behind. His lifeboat then began to spin towards the majority of the other lifeboats. Prince Sebastian immediately understood he could not, under any circumstances, tell anyone who he really was, probably until he reached dry land. That was already apparent, and the people in the lifeboats around him checking floating bodies for valuables and identity documents reinforced it, particularly when they started trying to get jewelry off the deceased. After they had collected what they wanted from the victims' bodies, they called the other ship to pick them up. When the rescuing ship arrived, they attempted to organize the winching up of the lifeboats to the deck. It turned out not all of the people on board were aware of the deliberate sinking plot. They immediately recognized Captain Ed Smith was in the front of one of the lifeboats and tried to winch his aboard as the number one priority. He had a short conversation with the crew, who immediately spoke to him. To abbreviate things, they winched the lifeboats up slowly, one by one. If when a lifeboat reached the deck level, the passengers in it appeared to celebrate, sinking the ship with a loud, hooray-like noise, usually in German, with stolen jewelry etc., they grabbed the quiet ones and tipped the rest who had been celebrating back into the water. Some were intelligent enough to not celebrate when their lifeboat was winched aboard and hide or jettison the valuables they had stolen off the bodies. Others weren't, they were in party mode. A macabre photograph was taken after the winching of the lifeboats, featuring my great-grandfather wrapped in blankets with a compass in his lap and dozens of body bags on the deck lined up behind him. When a large number of targeted passengers' estates passed on to beneficiaries, or their imposters, after the sinking was publicly reported as a tragic accident, involved perpetrators developed an abhorrent attitude. They and their associates' descendants are now an organized crime and terrorism cult. They pretend they have the precedent right to steal the family estates of anyone descended from a person on board the Titanic in the original incident, including estates that passed on to people who were aware of the original plan and gave the estate holders they inherited from tickets as gifts.